Hello, ghosts and ghoulies. Welcome to Scary and Bizarre Short Stories. I'm your host, Larry Lee Roten. This story is a ghostly tale. As we all know, most of us believe in ghosts. As they are, they're really frightening, and most of us are scared beyond words of them. It's okay if they exist. I just don't want them to exist near me. I hope you enjoy this story. It's called Allison's Haunting Dilemma. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make to live with the teasing for the next 3 years of high school or face my fears, knowing I suffered from panophobia. My name is Allison. I'm 15 years old, and I'll start my sophomore year in high school this fall. I've always thought I was a likable person. I get along with my friends, and we've shared many memories at the ice cream station. That's where we meet most days. The ice cream station is a malt shop with an arcade. Under their logo are the words, "Come on in and fill up." Believe me, we filled up there many times. It's a great place to hang out. I was in the station when my world came to a halt. My friends and I talked about an old house on Elm Street. It was deteriorating and had been vacant for years. We all knew it as the Johnson's house. The paint was peeling and some of the windows were broken. Vines grew around the columns on the front porch, sending out more feelers each day. As each year passed, Mother Nature gnawed away at the structure, reclaiming what was once hers. I'd heard the old house was haunted, but never went there. If I passed it, I did so in a hurry. I assumed looking at it would conjure up an evil spirit or ghost. I didn't want anything like that following me home. At least, that was my thinking. As I said, that day at the station, my friends and I sat talking about the Johnson's house. Everyone was kidding and daring anyone to go inside. Everyone refused. Then, for no reason, they all looked at me. Since the first grade, my friends teased me about being scared. Yes, I'm indeed frightened of, well, let's face it, I'm afraid of everything. Doctors call the phobia panophobia. My friends never let me forget it and tease me about being a scaredy cat. As I grew older, it started bothering me, and the more it bothered me, the more they teased me. I didn't like the harassment, which was more of an annoyance than anything else, but it was true. I'm scared of everything. It's well known that I'm afraid of mice, bugs, spiders, and bees. Oh, especially wasps. When one comes near me, I immediately go into fits. I start flinging my hands and arms like someone doing an uncanny dance. I'm afraid of shadows, driving, kitchen utensils, dogs, cats, and anything that goes bump at night. To me, everything bumped in the night. My friends tease me often, saying I'm afraid of my shadow. I must admit, that was the one thing that didn't frighten me. As I was saying, as we sat at the station, my friends dared me to go inside the Johnson's house, knowing darn well I'd never agree. What was I to do? I was so tired of the teasing and knew it wouldn't let up for the next 3 years. I couldn't help that I was so mistrustful about everything. Then, again, I knew I would never go into a haunted house. None of us would. They sat teasing me, saying the world would end if I went near the place, let alone set foot inside the house. I sat pondering the thought. What a dilemma. I was so scared of everything, and I could feel my heart racing as I thought about that old house. But I hated the teasing. My hands were sweating and I gasped for breath. My arms looked like pickles as goosebumps raced up and down them. The teasing would have to stop if I could only muster up enough courage to enter the house. It would be the bravest thing any of us ever did. I sat thinking about my predicament. I was in a quandary. "I'll do it," I said. My friends stared at me, and I repeated my statement. "I'll do it." They glared at the frightened little girl sitting at their table. I twisted my black hair around my finger, trying to remove the sweat. I tried to hide my anxiety. My stomach was churning, and I was sure the frozen treat I ate would make its way back up. I swallowed, trying to keep it down. "You're going into the old Johnson's house?" Jimmy asked. "Sure," I said. "I'm not as scared as you think I am." Everyone knew that was a lie. My mind started spinning, thought after thought. What was I doing? I couldn't believe what I was saying. Why couldn't I just keep my mouth shut? I would never go inside that old house, and I knew it. Okay, Clara said. We'll meet in front of the house Friday night at 11:45. You go inside and up to the second floor. Shine a light out the window, and we'll know you are there. You do that, and I'll never tease you about being scared again. Ah, music to my ears. As my mind tried to process the consequences of entering that house, I ignored them. I heard what I wanted to hear. My friends who had teased me since the first grade agreed they would never tease me again. I left the ice cream station. Then, as if hit by a ton of bricks, reality set in. What had I done? I hated the teasing about my condition, and I despised the thought of being tormented through high school. But going to the Johnsons' house at midnight? Oh, please, just kill me now. What had I done? Today was Thursday, and I decided to stroll by the old house against my better judgment, yet I forced myself to do so. It was sunny, and I assumed ghosts and spirits only come out at night. The witching hour, which was 3 o'clock in the morning, is when they are the most active. That's what I heard on the television. I was hoping the ghost hunters were right. I stood looking at the old house. I was sure it was beautiful at one time, but now it was a shell of what it once was. Old man Johnson died at age 45. He didn't leave the house to his wife. Instead, he donated it to the Baptist church. This upset his wife, and she begged the church to give her home back to her, but they refused. This created hard feelings between the church and Alice Johnson, but the church would not give up the house. There was a stipulation in Mr. Johnson's will. Although Alice Johnson didn't own the property, she would control it until she died. She couldn't sell or remove anything from her home, but she could live there until she died. This infuriated Alice. Alice went home, packed a trunk, and went to the Philippines. As long as she was alive, no one could take possession of the house. The church had to wait until she died, and Alice lived a long life. The once beautiful home began to deteriorate. No one cared for the property, as Alice never allowed anyone on the premises. The home slipped into ruin. 45 years later, the property still awaits Miss Johnson's return. However, each day that passes takes a toll on the weatherboard structure. As the paint peeled, the unprotected wood gave way to rot and decay. The inside of the house was intact. Alice abandoned her belongings. She took some of her clothes and left the home unlocked. The local authorities tried to keep the migrant workers out, but failed. As the years passed, the old house succumbed to a slow death. Dirt, dust, and filth overtook Alice's beloved possessions. They, too, felt the effects of abandonment. I walked up the drive. The drive had two concrete lanes for tires, and I thought how different it looked. If I was going to enter the house at midnight, I needed to know something about it. I stepped up on the back porch. The knob on the kitchen door wouldn't turn. Locked, I thought. I checked the window, and to my surprise, it slid up. I stepped into the kitchen. I checked the door. It had a turnkey lock that resembled an old deadbolt. I unlocked both locks and opened the door. The hinges gave way to the pressure and made a soft squeaking noise. The large windows let the sun flood the rooms, lighting the house. The bright light relieved my fears. It wasn't scary at all. I walked through the kitchen, dining, and living rooms. At the front door, there was a staircase. I headed toward it. My hands were sweating and my heart was pounding. I was nervous, but little by little, my anxiety surrendered to a more peaceful feeling. The house was old, lonely, and dusty. I didn't feel anything dangerous or ghost-like. Yet, I've never been in a situation like this, so how would I know? I stood at the entrance studying the staircase. It was magnificent. To my left was a parlor decorated with sofas, chairs, lamps, and at one time a beautiful aerial rug. Dusk consumed it all now. I pulled the pocket door shut. The staircase rose to the second floor, allowing access to a hall bath and 4 rooms. As I stepped onto the landing at the head of the stairs, I peered into the old bath. It was empty, and that delighted me. I closed that door. 2 bedrooms were facing the back of the house. I glanced inside and closed those doors. The old beds, curtains, and chests were dusty from years of neglect, but I realized the dust wouldn't kill me. My hands were sweating, but my heart hadn't slowed. I fought off the urge to run, and the more I explored, the less frightened I became. There were 2 more rooms to check, and both faced the front of the house. The room on the right surprised me. At one time, it was Alice's sewing room. 3 large windows in front and on the side of the house allowed the sun's rays to penetrate the room. The light chased away the shadows and created a brilliant glow. I could see why this was the sewing room. Stacked on the shelf were boats, material, and sewing supplies. I thought how hard it must have been for her to leave her belongings. Standing in the corner was a dress form. It appeared Alice had made arms and attached them to the form using long pins. It freaked me out, and I wanted to run, but the sunlight in the room calmed my nerves. As my hands trembled, I took a deep breath. It was only a dress form. The last room was another bedroom. I assumed it was the Johnson's bedroom. There was a full-size bed, dresser, and 2 wardrobes. I took a deep breath and opened one of the cabinets. Several long dresses remained on hangers. Alice's clothes, I assumed, left here over 45 years ago. I checked the second wardrobe. Old man Johnson's clothes still hang there. I pushed the door closed. I could feel my hands, brow, and underarms sweating. I wanted to run, but didn't. For some reason, seeing Alice's clothes made me feel sorry for her. It was as if I could relate to her. Seeing Clyde Johnson's clothes frightened me. After all, Clyde was dead, and Alice was still alive. This was the room where I would shine my light, alerting my friends I was on the second floor. I kept reassuring myself I could do this. I began clearing things from my path. I closed all of the doors. When I started to shut the door to Alice's sewing room, I had an idea. My burdens lifted. As I descended the stairs, I checked the lock on the front door. It was open. This would be my entrance, then up the stairs and shine my light out the window. I had closed all the doors upstairs, except the 2 facing the front of the house. I knew my friends would be standing on the city walk. 1:45 on Friday night, my friends and I stood facing the Johnson's house. I could feel the anxiety flowing from my friends. Just standing in front of the old place sent chills up my spine. I knew my friends wanted to run, but no one did. There were 9 of us, and the smell of fear flourished. "Well," Jimmy said, "you're up. Want to come with me?" I asked. "No," snapped Jimmy. I walked toward the front door. The door opened, and I stepped inside. I turned on my flashlight, and it lit up the room. I turned the latch on the front door. I didn't want anyone coming into the house behind me. I hurried up the stairs toward the 2 rooms I'd left open. The doors to the bath and to the 2 back bedrooms were still closed. I felt a sense of relief. I shined my light around and around, pretending to be nervous, lost, and disoriented. I pulled out a small light from my pocket, took in a deep breath, and entered the sewing room. I turned off my floodlight. I pushed the dress form in front of the window and returned to the door. I pocketed my small light and turned on the floodlight. I entered the Johnson's bedroom and shined my light out the window. I could see my friends standing on the walk. I headed back toward the sewing room. I flashed my light up, down, and around as I left the room. It appeared I was searching every corner and crevice. When I stepped back into the hall, I turned and focused my beam on the sewing dress form. It sent the eeriest silhouette out the window. I stepped back into the hall and let out a blood-curdling scream. It was so loud it frightened me. I ran toward the head of the stairs. Coming to my senses, I stopped and flashed my light again around the upstairs, ensuring it entered both rooms. I screamed as loud as I could. I will tell you, it was most frightening. I went down the stairs and into the living room. I let out one more scream and headed toward the kitchen door. I slipped out the back door and headed down the driveway. The streetlights confirmed my thinking as I saw my friends running down the street. I watched them turn down a side street, heading for their homes. I walked to the front of the house and stood momentarily, staring at the abandoned home. I nodded and whispered, "Thank you." I strode toward home, knowing after this night my life would never be the same. And it wasn't. I didn't feel scared anymore. I inhaled a fresh breath of air as I walked toward home. I knew the teasing would end. I had faced and overcome an awful dilemma. It was difficult for me, but well worth the sacrifice. I'd heard many times in English class that Shakespeare once wrote, "Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once." I smiled and then laughed aloud. If old Shakespeare knew what he was talking about, I guess all my friends died a little tonight. I'm sure I scared the living daylights out of them. I hope you enjoyed this scary and bizarre short story. It's not that scary, however, it's really bizarre. Many adults fear ghosts. I might be one of those adults. Last night I heard something scream in my house. It was horrifying. I got out of bed and hid in a closet. I thought that was the safest place until I realized a ghost was hiding in there with me. Needless to say, we both skedaddled. I hope you enjoyed this scary and bizarre short story. If you would, please subscribe and give this story a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. As always, thank you for visiting my channel.